I've always had a fascination with vigilantes in comic books and film. Most vigilante-type comic heroes don't have superpowers, which make them interesting to hypothesize about in the real world. However, I feel that when most people analyze vigilantes from entertainment media, I think it is often not painting a full picture when trying to compare the character to real life. While I suppose most people do what I would call a face value comparison of a vigilante character to how he or she would be perceived in the real world, I think this type of comparison completely disregards story and setting, and as a result, misses a huge part of the character. In storytelling, a character and story cannot be so easily changed without changing their meaning completely. That is to say, that while we categorize elements in a story into things such as character and setting, extracting a character from their story while disregarding their conflict in the narrative or plot points in their story will leave us with only half of a picture. In this analysis, I would like to propose looking at the meaning behind a character versus meaning in our own world. This is not to say that I think this is a better type of analysis, but just a thought experiment. Perhaps another side of the analytical picture. There are probably many other sides that could be explored as well, but this is just something that I've been pondering lately. The most well-known vigilante is probably the Batman. The Batman has a strict no guns and no killing code when it comes to his crime fighting. This code stems from the death of his parents that he witnessed as a child through gun violence. In the real world, holding a no-kill policy towards violent criminals would be nearly impossible. Humans are very fragile, and no doubt the Batman would probably have caused many accidental deaths by now, just by blunt force trauma alone. Not to mention all kinds of other fatalities with his deadly gadgets, car crashes, and the list could go on. The only reason those people are not dead is because the writer of the story deems it to be so. A show like The Boys really shows how fragile humans are and how easily accidental deaths can happen. To me, the main meaning of the Batman is the choice to actively try and make a world in which no one has to go through the same tragedy and trauma that you went through. The choice to try and leave the world a better place than you found it. Most of Batman's villains have gone through tragedy as well, but instead of trying to prevent more tragedy, they instead pursue their own self-interest. Or in other cases, are so outside the norm of society that they feel, perhaps rightfully so, that they could never be accepted in normal society. Hence they are often taken to Arkham Asylum rather than a prison. In our society, pursuing your own self-interest is seen as the reason for living. We are taught, if not directly, constantly indirectly, that getting ahead in life is the number one goal in life. Therefore, those who cannot adapt to this quote-unquote natural law are seen to be problematic in society. We can look at Batman and easily recognize that he is a hero, but there are no heroes in the real world. Everyone is out for themselves, not as villains in most cases, but as the natural order of our world. Someone may do a heroic deed from time to time, but it is usually a fleeting moment in an unusual circumstance. Looking at another vigilante that is not quite so easily seen as a hero is the Punisher. Unlike Batman, he kills criminals without hesitation. The Punisher's wife and children were gunned down in a park. Afterwards, he takes the approach that if criminals weren't allowed to roam free, his family and others like them wouldn't be needlessly killed. I find that the problem with this isn't so much the killing, but the fact that in the real world, you could never have enough proof of wrongdoing or malice in every situation to justify execution. Again, the only reason the Punisher is right in his assessments every single time is because the writer deems it to be so. To me, the main meaning of the Punisher is the question of justice. Is the Punisher enacting justice or just coping with his loss? It begs the question, is the court and prison system enough? Are some criminals able to avoid the law either by undetection or bribery? Of course, the Punisher never runs out of criminals or villains in the fictional world, so it's hard to say if his actions really have any effect. I would say that in the real world, most of us are more driven like the criminals than the vigilantes. Fictional vigilantes aren't driven by money, power, or success. As Rorschach said,
"We don't do this thing because it's permitted. We do it because we have to. We do it because we're compelled."
They are compelled by a singular drive of something abstract that they may not ever even see a benefit from, either to themselves or even society at large. The real world is not like that. In fact, I would argue that most white-collar crime is all but encouraged in our society. It is seen as the drive to get ahead, as long as you don't get caught in something too overtly criminal. Most white-collar crime is hard to prosecute because outside of overwhelming evidence or a confession, people can say that they just didn't know or it was an accident. In other instances, white-collar crime happens between numerous conspiring individuals or even a whole company. The fact still stands that even if we aren't committing a crime, our society is driven by the pursuit of money, power, and success. And we can justify that pursuit because everyone else is doing it. Or perhaps we tell ourselves it's to provide for our friends, family, or loved ones. There can be any number of justifications. Lauren Southern just put out a really great video about our unlawful economy on the Tenet Media channel. I would highly recommend checking it out if you have the time. I'll try to leave a link in the description or a pinned comment down below. So when we are comparing vigilantes to the real world, let's not forget that we live in very different worlds. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.